Hey guys, I am Game Advisor and welcome to our February survival game update video where we're going to go over all the cool new survival games that you should be watching going into February, as well as the big updates that are going to be changing some of the more popular survival games. So with that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Now, first up on the list is actually going to be Dark and Darker. Dark and Darker, for those of you who don't know, is essentially a Tarkov fantasy looter game where you go in with items and equipment, and if you die, you lose it. But if you survive and make it out, you'll get extra equipment to be able to bring into your next run. It has a whole leveling system and a whole bunch of other stuff built into it. But we have a whole nother video you guys can go watch if you want to get an in-depth look as to what Dark and Darker is. Either way, though, Dark and Darker is going to be having an alpha test on February 2nd. This will be the 4th alpha playtest they've done, and in their history of alpha playtests, they usually have them be anywhere between a week to 2 weeks long. Do keep in mind the game is totally free to test, so if you want to go into the alpha test just to check it out, that is a great idea to see if you're going to like the game before the game starts to cost money when it comes out in release. Either way, whether it's a playtest or not, it's still a super fun survival game to play, so I highly recommend you play it. Following that is Wild West Dynasty. Wild West Dynasty seems to be going for some sort of like a colony or a city builder simulation game mixed with that Wild West atmosphere in all your stereotypical survival elements. If you guys have ever played the game Medieval Dynasty, you can expect something very similar, as this is being published by the same company. This is different developers, but the same publishing company. This means that the game is probably going to have a lot of the same elements with a lot of grindiness in it. However, we don't know exactly what it's going to hold yet because we don't have our hands on it. You can expect to be able to build your own city and bring people into your town to live there, as well as give them jobs and all sorts of other things. Again, very similar to Medieval Dynasty, just with a more Wild West style theme. Now, as far as February 16th goes, we actually have another game coming out on February 16th, and that is going to be Wild Hearts. So for those of you who aren't aware, Wild Hearts is currently planned to be $70, and you can pre-order it right now if you want to. However, I would actually encourage you guys to wait on this one, as it's either going to be a really good game or probably a really bad game. I don't know which way it's going to go, but nonetheless, I would encourage you not to pre-order and maybe wait a day until after release, unless you are just dead set on purchasing it, because Wild Hearts is trying to be a Monster Hunter style game. But if you've never played that before, just know that it's kind of like Dark Souls, but bosses only. So it's looking like it's got all the traditional, boss fighting Dark Souls style, or all your traditional Monster Hunter boss themes. The whole idea is that basically you're fighting these giant monsters that have elemental energy in them in some different way, or have something else going on that's making them rampage, and it's your job to take them down and stop them. After you take them out, you can use their parts to create better armor and weapons and things like that in order to progress further into the game and get better equipment so you can handle more difficult hunts. Again, this game looks extremely similar to Monster Hunter, but its main twist is that you can actually build stuff sort of within the world. It's kind of hard to explain how this works, but it looks like you're going to have some kind of a utility tool or an item that you can drop down, and it will create sort of an object that you can then use to do things like, I believe there's a zipline one. I know there's one that just lets you get up to a higher elevation so that you can jump down and do like an aerial attack, all sorts of different stuff. Either way, if you check out the trailer, you'll see some of that stuff, but nonetheless, I would wait on purchasing it until at least a day after release and you start getting those initial impressions in of the game, because it is a $70 title. Now, next up on this list is probably the one you already know about, and it is the most popular survival game that's going to be coming out this February, and that is Sons of the Forest. For those of you who don't know, this is the sequel to The Forest. There's not a whole lot of information out there right now, other than the fact that this game looks like it's pretty much just The Forest 2.0, more modern graphics. They've got some new mechanics in the game. I believe you can actually get married to someone in the game, or you're already married to them. Again, I don't know the whole storyline. I just know what's been posted about the game up until this point in time, and so far it looks like you're basically going to have a mutant wife, and there's a whole little sexy scene where she's bathing or whatever in the trailer. But it's the Forest, so you're still going to have, cannibal-like looking dudes coming at you, and, you're going to have all those big giant mutant creatures, which there looks to be some seriously awesome ones. Like, I believe there's one that has 2 different bodies, like, sewn together, more or less, at the hip, and then it's just, they're able, like, 2 dudes with torsos only, and they walk on their hands, but I don't know, it's weird. Either way, it's the Forest, it's weird, it's creepy, it's a horror survival game with all your fun survival mechanics and more from the previous game, so I definitely recommend you guys pick this one up and give it a try, as odds are it's going to be a great title just like the Forest was. Now, before we move on, I do have a couple of honorable mentions for you guys that I want to make sure you're aware of, but do keep in mind these are not necessarily survival games. These are just big games that if you weren't aware of, you might want to go check out because they seem like they have a lot of promise to them. One of these is going to be Company of Heroes 3. Company of Heroes 3 is essentially an RTS game with a shooter kind of style play to it, so it's really hard to explain. It's a very unique kind of RTS style of game, and it's more similar to things like the old school ones where you're playing things like StarCraft, at least in the past. I'm not sure what the new one's going to hold, but just keep in mind you're using ranged units in a militaristic environment, and it's based in the real world. So you're not going to have, things teleporting around the map or, dudes running in with you at swords, at least not for the most part. Again, I don't know exactly what's going to be in the game, but hey, it's a cool looking game. And if you're into RTSs, I would definitely recommend you give this one a look. Our next honorable mention is Hogwarts Legacy. If you somehow have been living under a rock and don't know about this game, it has been the talk of the town for the most part for quite a while. It's bringing back that old school style of playing through Hogwarts as like a Harry Potter style of character. So I'm not really going to go into depth on this one. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just go watch the trailer. There's kind of an RPG driven game. So, story driven, things like that. And you're going to progress and get new spells and all that kind of stuff. It's a whole very in-depth experience, so I highly recommend you go and read about the game or go read and see what the actual devs have said about it, as it's a very big game and I just don't have time to cover it here in this video. The other 2 games I have for you guys today are going to be Atomic Heart and Blood Bowl 3. If you don't know what Atomic Heart is, it basically seems to be kind of a science fiction, kind of punky, Fallout style of universe, and it seems to be like an RPG game with some story in it. So if that's something you're interested in, go ahead and give that a look, as I'm sure it's something you'll enjoy if you've enjoyed things like Fallout in the past. I can't speak for the developers as I haven't played a lot of their games, so I can't really tell you what their track record is and if it's going to be a good game or not. All I can do is tell you that it looks really cool, so you should go check it out if that's something you're interested in. And then Blood Bowl 3 is basically a turn-based strategy game where you play football in a Warhammer universe. It's very bloody, it's very fun, it's been a game that's been around for years, all the way back to the original Blood Bowl, which came out years and years ago, and a lot of people really enjoy it. It is a strategy game and it is turn-based, so if that's something you're not interested in, I'd just stay away from it. And it is a very, love it, hate it style of a game. So if you're unsure, I'd say to just stay away from it or go watch some Blood Bowl 2 gameplay, as Blood Bowl 2 has been out for quite a while. So you can go ahead and see what that has to offer, as I'm sure Blood Bowl 3 is going to be pretty similar. Now, my last game for you guys today is actually a game that technically says it's going to release on March 1st. And this game is The Day Before. If you didn't know, The Day Before is a game that has been crazy hyped up in the entire gaming community to a point that is just absolutely ridiculous over the past several months. The graphics in it look to be super cool, and it seems to be some kind of like DayZ-ish style gameplay with a little bit of like fast action-paced looting and stuff like that. It seems really hard to explain because the devs just haven't given us really any solid information other than their trailers. And to be fair with you, all of the trailers are mostly just cinematic footage. They're like, this is gameplay, and then they show like literally 10 seconds of gameplay or a minute of gameplay. I mean, they literally had this whole thing where they were hyping up the game and how they wanted to talk about it, and it turned into an ad for some app that they had instead of actually talking about the game, because they only had 1 minute of gameplay in a 2-hour video that was supposed to be a big announcement about the gameplay. So to me, this just seems like it's very fishy. There's a lot of signs that this could be a very bad game, but it has a lot of potential. I'm just going to tell you, when this does come out, if it comes out on March 1st like it's supposed to, that I highly, 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 highly recommend. You either wait for our review to come out and watch that before playing the game if it's not out already by the time you're watching this video, or you do yourself the favor and wait and watch other people play it on Twitch and stuff like that, at least for an hour or two, because I have a feeling this is going to be one of those games where it's going to be like a gotcha moment. Haha, you spent $60 on our game and it's super, super, super laggy and over optimized, because some of the stuff they're promising for this game is incredibly ambitious, and they have developers that they have requested to work for free because they can't get their goals done in time. This game has already been pushed back, and I wouldn't be surprised if it gets pushed back again, but nonetheless, just know if you're interested, you need to do some research, and you really should be cautious about giving these devs your money until you see some actual solid gameplay from a normal person playing the game, not just the developers on a super, super optimized computer that the game has been perfectly designed for, but from somebody else who has not actually developed the game themselves. Either way, thank you guys so much for watching, and I want to give a big shout out to our Platinum and Above channel members, which include Jonathan S., Caustic FPV, and Jim Phillips. I'm Game Advisor, and I'll see you next time.